te va. Sí.
So you can like pick up the
Ese...
if you prefer.
Ven, esa, ok, perfecto. Welcome everyone. Thank you all for being here. We might be expecting a couple more people. My name is Angel or Angel. I go by both. My pronouns are they, them. And I am here with these 5 amazing facilitators. I will let them introduce themselves. We are all a part of Higher Self Friendly, which is a network of heart center facilitators working to bring people together around creating inclusive and safe spaces for LGBTQ plus, BIPOC, Black, Indigenous, people of color, and honestly, everyone that is looking for a deeper connection within through mind-body, self-development, self-expression experiences. We have a few different programs today, Higher Self Sundays, as part of our winter solstice celebrations, is one of our 3 programs that we host. Weekly, bi-weekly, monthly, and then sporadically. Higher Self Sundays is a few times a year. Very, very excited to be here sharing space with all of you. We'll get to introductions for each and every one of you. I won't be sitting up here much longer. I'll actually be with Angel capturing some video. If anybody is not okay with being on camera or your face on the camera for our promotional videos, you can come and let us know. We'll make sure to take you off of any material. I do like to share a disclaimer that these healing modalities need to be shared out with the world. People need to see how we are all healing together in collective spaces. So still, if you prefer not to be recorded, we will honor that. But other than that, I will pass it on to the facilitators who will be introducing themselves, and I hope you enjoy today.
Receive where we can come into ourselves, but also within community. So thank you all for being here. It's so wonderful to be a part of this and then here at the Healing Tree. So I'm also a licensed Ishtara teacher. The simplest way I like to say it in my own words is connecting to the wisdom of our own bodies. And I am also a storyteller, which I am very passionate about because it is through our stories that we can understand each other and really truly realize we are all one. So thank you for having me. I'll pass it down to Christina.
Awesome. Hi, everybody. My name is Christina. So I'm a licensed therapist. I have my own practice, Compassion Corner Counseling. And later today, I'll be sharing a little bit more about what compassion is and what empowerment is. That is kind of the topic of the day. And if you guys want to learn anything more, if you like kind of some of the things that I'm sharing, then you can feel free to follow me on social media at Compassion Corner Counseling. I also have my little information graphic here, and there's a QR code if you want to sign it, or I got some cards and stuff too. So that's kind of what I'm here to do today. And then I also have a nonprofit called Greenhouse Gives, where we work to create safe spaces to bring people together and help people realize that we're better together than we are apart. So our mission very much overlaps with Higher Self Friendly, which is why we love supporting each other, going to each other's events and things like that. So if you'd like to learn more about Greenhouse Gives, then you can also follow us on social media, and we will have some free events open to the public happening next year, so you can stay tuned for that. Happy to be here.
Excuse me. Hi, everybody. I'm Khariah. I'm an RYT 200 trauma-informed yoga instructor. It's very much the name of my game, Compassionate Healing Through Trauma-Informed Yoga. I teach a couple different styles, but I like to teach Vinyasa and Yin, and I'm very grateful to be in this space with you all today.
Hello everyone, my name is Herbey. I'm from Mexico, born and raised. My pronouns are they, them as well. I'm a yoga teacher. I got a certification in Ashtanga Vinyasa primary series, but honestly, I rarely teach the primary series. What I currently teach is is what I personally practice, which is a mix of this yoga style, but also combine it with a lot of breath work, Kundalini yoga, and simply using conscious movement, somatic release, through the body. The topic today is self-empowerment and compassion. My connection to this topic is simply my own experience as a person who was born in a very conservative society, and breaking through the lifestyle that I used to have back then when I was younger. So yeah, I'll be sharing more about it when we dive deeper into the topic. And thank you everyone for being here.
Hello, my name is Ashley. I'm a hypnotherapist, a coach, and I'm passionate about creating and co-creating spaces where we can all come together and tap into our authenticity, where we can tap into the feeling of our emotions. We live in a really disconnected world, and I think feeling our emotions and allowing ourselves to just be who we are and be seen in that is one of the most healing things. So thank you for being here. I am so blessed to be here and be part of this community, and I am looking forward to seeing what unfolds tonight.
And before we pass it on to Christina to start us on, or whoever is going to start us on, I want to give a big thank you to the Healing Tree Collective for having us here. This is our first time, I hope, of many. Beautiful, wonderful space. Thank you, Angel and Nereyda, for having us in your beautiful, amazing space that is already creating safer and braver space for us to come together. Very grateful for that. Thank you. Thank you.
Well, that will be me. I will be the first one to, I'm just gonna guide you this evening. I'm really excited because there's going to be a lot of stuff that we're going to be talking about. There's going to be a lot that we will be processing and just kind of understanding, right? And sometimes before we can even receive, right, we need to kind of ground down a little bit, because sometimes we might still be carrying things from whether 30 minutes ago, this morning, yesterday, whatever it is. So yes, please feel free to grab any of those anytime you'd like. If it just supports your back better, please do. And I want to emphasize, we have extra pillows, blankets, bolsters, anything that you need to be comfortable, please feel free at any time to grab it. That's why it's all here, okay? So just, I want to say that. So I'm glad you listened to what you needed. That's actually very very aligned with what I'm going to talk about right now. So I wanted to lead us all today into a moving meditation practice, is what I'm going to call it. And so really, it's an invitation to listen to our bodies. It's also very grounding because we get to listen to our bodies and come in here and not so much be in here, right? So what does that look like? It's easy for us to picture, like, if I have a relationship with Christina, right, we can see it as it's two-way, right? Whether it's with our friends, our partners, our parents, our children, it's always two ways, right? And the way I like to see it is our body is like another person. That also deserves to be two ways. And that also means listening. That also means our body wants to speak and wants to be heard. And, you know, we've adapted a lot to what society asks of us now, and it's very much go, 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 think with the brain all the time. When do we find the time to just let our body speak, however our body wants to speak, without judgment? I mean, imagine if you are talking to somebody and they are listening and they are judging you, that's not going to feel good. Now, if they have no judgment, if there's acceptance, it allows you to go deeper. It allows you to freely express whatever you want to express, right? So that is what we get to do with our bodies. And I truly believe our bodies hold so much wisdom that wants to be moved, that wants to be like, it wants to be expressed, but sometimes we don't give it the voice it needs. And so my desire for all of you is to allow your body to move, to speak, to express the way your body wants to. And this is how we build a relationship, right? Think about your long-term relationships that you have with somebody. That's because it's been mutually like this give and take all the time. You're listening, you're receiving, you're giving, all the things that fulfill that relationship. So you get to do that with your body all the time. So I want to emphasize too, there's no right or wrong. And just like when somebody is expressing themselves to you, you're not going to say, why aren't you doing that? Why aren't you doing that? No. So I want to invite you to be curious, to explore, to play. There's no right or wrong. So if at any point when I explain a little bit more about what we're going to do, there's resistance, then say, okay, I see you. And that's it. No judgment, just I see you. That right there is when your body says, oh, they're listening to me. I feel heard. You start to build a stronger relationship, right? So I want to invite that. I want to set the tone for this place of curiosity. This place where you get to be still and nothing else matters other than I'm going to practice listening to my body. And sometimes our body can surprise us, and that's what's really cool is that we don't, it's not our place to judge or to stop or like to judge. I'm going to say that again because it's so important. So what I'm going to be moving you through is just an opportunity for you to use breath and stretch. Because do you think about like the Sunday morning stretches, right? They feel amazing. I should say, if you don't have any not Sunday, it doesn't have to be Sunday. Any day where you don't have to rush anywhere or go anywhere, and you just wake up and you're like, oh my God, I don't have to worry about anything. This feels good. You're taking your time, right? That feels so good. So I want to invite you to pair that with breath. And I know that we talk a lot about connection to your breath. Sometimes it can easily be like something you're just like, I'm breathing, yeah. And that's it. But how can your breath guide your body to do what your body wants to do? And that's what I want to invite you to do. So when the breath is coming in, I call your breath. When the breath is coming in, allow yourself to feel what that feels like in your body, when it's taking up space in your body. And then when it's like making its way out, right? And when you feel the breath in, invite yourself to do a stretch that feels good. So maybe I'm going to take a deep breath and I'm like, oh yeah, I'm going to stretch my arms because that feels good. And I'm going to take another deep breath. And then I'm going to go up like this because that feels good. So we're going to start by just stretching and listening to our breath and what feels good. When we listen to what feels good, that is when we create safety within our bodies. That is when you get to feel good in your body. So because I'm a big fan of dimming the lights, I hope that's okay. I'm going to dim the lights to help with the safety because I feel like that just feels good for me. I hope that feels good for you. Everybody, could I use your phone? Thank you so much. I'm going to go ahead. The first song, I am just going to invite you to just settle into your body. I talked a lot. You received a lot. Go ahead and settle into your body. And then I will guide you. All you have to do is just be present with your body right now. And then I will let you know when I want to guide you to really fully take up space with your body, okay? You might hear my voice coming a little closer to you because I'm going to be walking, but my eyes will be closed. Nobody here is watching you. This is for you. This is for you to take this time, take this space to be with your body. Wherever there's tension, bring the breath there. Maybe there's a moment of stillness that you just kind of check in. Think about where you are. You have made it a point to be here with these other humans and sharing this space together. You are here for yourself, you are here for them, you are here for the collective. Honor yourself for being here. And I'm going to invite you to take that breath in and feel it coming into your body, taking up that space as it moves out. Now, there's going to be a rhythm, a beat to the song. But you get to choose to listen to the rhythm and the beat of your body. Go into what feels good. Go into the stretches that maybe you've not made the time to do. This is your time to take up space. This is pleasure. This is pleasure in your body. Your body desires to express. It is your birthright to express. Let the breath, the life inside you guide you into the movement your body desires. This is how we listen. You can move as little or as much as you like. This is for you. You can make noises. You can sigh. This is you coming back to your body. It is a privilege to have our bodies. If there is resistance, that's okay. If you're thinking about when it's going to end, that's okay. Be still if you need it. Listen to what you need. No, you're still here, you're still connected. So bring that with you the rest of the night, honoring your body and being with yourself. Thank you for allowing me to guide that.
Here to talk about compassion and empowerment, and I think it's important before we get into them to talk a little bit about why these topics are so important. Like, what's the reason to talk about them? Well, some of you might be aware that the world is not always the most friendly kind of place, and there's a lot of pain and suffering, and the state of the world right now is sometimes disheartening, and with so much division and isolation and othering of it's us and them, instead of coming together and realizing that we're all human, and if we were able to empower each other and show compassion to each other, what kind of better world, more peaceful world might we live in if we could treat each other like that, instead of focusing on the ways that we're different and the divides. And right now we've got politics going on, and that was really stressful for a lot of the LGBTQ BIPOC community. empathy, which is part of where I know Angel wanted to have a space today to kind of recognize some of that and be able to hold space for people who are hurting right now and afraid and, dealing with the stress and difficulties of the world. And so if we can kind of just take a moment to kind of reflect on where our world is now and if this is really where we want to be, or if we would like to work towards a more compassionate world where we're empowering each other and empowering ourselves to do better, and to be able to move forward together. So I'm going to open it up. I don't know if any of the other facilitators wanted to talk a little bit about the state of the world or anything like that before we move into our educational portion. Anybody want to say anything? No?
Yeah.
Okay, awesome. And I can't see you over there, so I just realized, I was like, wait, let me talk compassionately. Okay, so then we'll just go ahead and go straight into some information about compassion and empowerment. So let's start with compassion, and this is going to be a collaborative conversation. This is throughout this entire event, you're encouraged to participate, share your thoughts, be involved with the conversation, and we have a really nice sized group here, so I feel like we can really, hear each other out. So I want to start, instead of me just telling you what compassion is, what do you think compassion is? How would you describe compassion? Anyone want to take a whack at it? Okay.
I feel like I've been having a lot of conversations lately about the difference between empathy and compassion.
That's a good one.
Kind of how we observe without absorbing. And I think that's exactly kind of what you're talking about with the suffering and the pain. It's really easy to take those kind of things on and to feel them in yourself.
A lot of times people think compassion and empathy are kind of one and the same, and they are. They overlap, but they're not the same thing. And so I'll kind of wait to talk about it, I guess, because I want to hear maybe some more thoughts on compassion first. But yeah, I'm glad that you brought that up because I want to talk about that too. Any other thoughts on what compassion is?
Yeah, sure. I think it's multifaceted. Like empathy and compassion, like you said, are kind of connected. I feel like empathy is a lot of times almost being able to feel almost sorry for somebody, and sometimes it almost is like if you're being empathetic for somebody, you're almost like, I feel sorry for you, right? Whereas compassion is more about like understanding how that person feels and being compassionate for how that person feels. But it can also sometimes be what's best for that person or best for yourself, and being compassionate about like, is this actually the best course of action for this person, or there might be an enabler at some point, like so there's a little bit of like, you can try to understand how they feel and you can see it from their point of view. And to me, that's more compassion, whereas empathy, you're like, oh, I'm sorry that, like your dad died. I'm sorry that happened, right? And maybe you could feel like this is how I would feel, and that's more of like what an empathy kind of feeling is, whereas compassion is, well, how does that person feel about it? And then you can also say like, there's another, like I said, the other component is, are you enabling them to do too much with certain things, or are you being compassionate about what they actually need and feel?
Yeah, awesome. So you are right on track. So I'll kind of share a definition of compassion now after having talked about it a little bit. So compassion is the awareness of pain and suffering as a normal part of the human condition with a desire to help alleviate and prevent it. So that part, that ending part, really makes a difference because it's not even just the desire, it is the action, like you're doing something. And that is something that sets compassion apart from empathy, is the action that you take to actually help relieve pain and suffering. So compassion actually has 4 components: awareness, normalizing, kindness, and alleviation. So a lot of times we think of kindness as like, oh, you're just being nice, you're compassionate, it's the same thing. You can be nice but not be compassionate, and you can be compassionate but not be nice. It is actually 2 different things, but we often kind of lump them into the same category. And so the first part, awareness, is recognizing that somebody or yourself is experiencing pain and suffering, being aware of that. And so that is maybe the foundation compassion to have like sympathy and empathy, where you kind of notice that somebody isn't feeling good. But the difference of the way that you respond to it changes whether you're being sympathetic, empathetic, compassionate, nice, or something else. So with sympathy, you've heard that phrase of like, oh, like, how would you feel if you were in their shoes or something like that, right? Sympathy is like, if you're in somebody else's shoes, how would you feel? Well, if their dad died and if you put yourself in that position and your dad died, then you'd probably feel sad. So, oh, I feel for you, that's sad. That's sympathy. Empathy takes it a step further by saying, not being you in their shoes, but if you were them in their shoes. What does that look like? And so empathy is, well, if I was that person, maybe I know that that person whose father just died, they had no relationship with them at all, and they're not even very affected by the fact that their dad died. They're actually kind of relieved because now they don't have to stress about the pressure of reconnecting with their father or something like that. So empathy says, I understand you from your perspective and your situation, given the information I know about you and your life. And then compassion takes it a step further by saying, okay, now that I recognize this pain and suffering that you're experiencing, I'm aware of it, and I can recognize that this is a normal human experience. We all experience pain and suffering. You're not alone in this, and I want to help you to feel better. And so I'm going to respond with kindness by, wow, I'm so sorry to hear that, your dad died, and it must be challenging for you given the complex relationship that you had with him. And is there anything that I can do to support you or to make you feel better, or, whatever. Maybe like that specific example is a little more complex, so it's hard to give a quick example of compassion with that. But so compassion really requires the action, what are you doing to help alleviate that pain and suffering? And sometimes it's not always so simple. Sometimes compassion can be something, require something of yourself that you are, like, it's vulnerable, like you don't really want to do. And some people think of another misconception of compassion is that it's weakness, and that oh, you're just soft and you just, you're caring to everybody and you don't have a backbone. And that's not what compassion is either. Sometimes compassion is making the hard choices. Like sometimes compassion is you have a brother who's a drug addict and they come to you asking for money and you say no. That's compassionate, even though it's hard and even though it's going to cause conflict and even though it's a problem for them. You know that at the end of the day, if you were to give them money that they're going to go out and buy drugs with it, then you're actually enabling their behavior, and it's no longer compassionate because you're fueling the thing that is causing them pain and suffering. And compassion is working to alleviate the pain and suffering, right? So again, with this example of if your brother's an addict, if I did give them the money, some people would say, well, that's nice. You gave them, that's a nice thing to do. Maybe it was temporarily. Nice can be something that makes people feel good in the moment, but nice doesn't always help them down the road. And it doesn't always help them to address their underlying issues and problems. So it might be nice to give them money, but it's not compassionate, right? And it might be compassionate to say, no, I'm not going to give you money, but I will recommend treatment options and I'll help you find like a resource that you can use. But they might not think that's very nice. They might not like that, right? So they're not actually the same thing. So based on what I've been sharing so far, that gives some insight into why compassion is not just being nice. It's not quite the same as empathy, though you can be, empathy is kind of a part of it. It helps you to provide compassion a little bit easier and know what direction to go, but you can be empathetic and not compassionate, right? And then one of the last kind of misconceptions I wanted to emphasize was the fact that compassion is weak. People look at it and it's like, oh, you're showing your feelings, you're connecting, you're caring, it's like a weakness. Especially men have this pressure from society to be firm all the time and not show that caring nature or nurturing nature. but it's not weak. As we just talked about this example with, if your brother's an addict, it is hard to tell somebody you love, no, I'm not going to help you the way that you want me to help you. And it requires a vulnerability on your part to be honest about like your feelings and understand that other person's feelings and be able to communicate that and set boundaries and be firm and deal with conflict. Compassion is not easy, which also brings me to the next point of this is why not everybody does it. That is one of the barriers to compassion is it's not easy and it does come with consequences. And so it's sometimes easier to be not compassionate, sometimes even rude or insensitive, than it is to be compassionate. So with that in mind, I'd like to brainstorm some of the other barriers. Like, what do you think are some other things that might get in the way of us being compassionate? Either to others or others to us. What might be some barriers to compassion? Yeah.
Well, from what I've learned from different authors speaking about compassion is this connection that us humans have around our own human condition, and that we all share the same condition of these beings that we are, species of humans, which is we all have struggles, we all have challenges, we all crave for safety, for happiness, we all have dreams. And when we are able to understand that we pretty much have the same foundation as humans, we start to see each other maybe different but not distant. So yeah, we're all different. Like we see each other and we're all different, but we are water from the same ocean, let's say. Every wave from the ocean is different, but they're all made of the same, and us humans share these same foundations. And when we're able to understand this human condition, we can get closer to one another and really understand what compassion is, which Christina is describing. It requires an action. It's not simply feeling sorry for somebody. That's not compassion. Feeling sorry can be superficial, can be just having a straight face, but not really taking in what's going on. And it's not really about understanding exactly what somebody else is feeling, because that's not possible to feel somebody else's pain. I mean, the brain processes pain, emotional pain, in the same area where physical pain is processed. So we're not able to understand.
And just finding those little moments in your day-to-day and your interactions with other people and yourself of how can I show myself compassion and kindness? How can I show others compassion and kindness? And so some of the barriers might be the fear of vulnerability. Some of the barriers might be self-criticism, like just talking down to yourself, or from the outside world, people talking down to you, just societal pressures. Like if we think of like racism and these bigger systemic issues, there's a lot of barriers for people who might be like racist to be able to be compassionate. And it's not just, the vulnerability piece is a big part of it, because if they show vulnerability and show compassion to, let's say a white person is racist against Black people, then all their white friends are going to be like, wait a second, there's this pressure from their society, their group, their community to be a certain way. And when they're not, they're going to get backlash for that and deal with the consequences. So there's a lot more to compassion and like why it's so difficult to be compassionate than it maybe seems at the forefront of it. Do you want to share something? Actually, even given the example I just provided, if that white person expressed themselves, the right family, they're going to get a whole bunch of backlash and people are going to be like, what is wrong with you? And judgment and criticism and shame and all of this, it's not safe. So maybe like one of the things that we need to do to be able to promote a more compassionate world is to also create more safe spaces like we're doing today, And so safety is super important. And then, safety is a whole other topic in itself, because there's also the difference between like actual safety versus perceived safety and perception of threat, right? So we can be still in a safe environment, but not feel safe enough inside to be able to express ourselves. But you also touched on like a really important component, which is like being able to express yourself authentically. I think that ties in really well with the other part of our topic today, which is self-empowerment, like feeling empowered, empowered to be able to express yourself. That is kind of a privilege sometimes, and not everybody has that experience. And so it's like being able to have the self-awareness, the sense of safety, the understanding of compassion and what that is. All of that is, there's so much information that goes into being able to actually practice compassion. And so also feeling empowered to be able to do so. And so before I go into what empowerment is, I also wanted to just pause to let you guys know that if you're interested in learning more about compassion, I did just launch a few resources. I have a free ebook on self-compassion, which is available through the link in my bio and my social media on my website, so you guys can give that a download. I also have an e-course that I just launched on self-compassion, and it's like over like 5 hours worth of like videos, and the videos are all like bite-sized pieces, like 1 to 5 minutes or something like that, so you can just like watch them in your free time and stuff. And so if you have any questions about that, feel free to like come up to me after, or you can scan the QR code, which I know is like way too far for you right now, but on there, get some cards or whatever. But compassion is definitely a passion of mine. And so that's a lot of what I like to talk about. I mean, my therapy practice is called Compassion Corner Counseling. So if you have any other questions or want to learn more about compassion, like please let me know. So I just wanted to share those resources with you. First, before you can have a healthy relationship, or is that not good because it deters people? Like, you're never going to have a healthy relationship because you don't love yourself. It's complicated. It's not black and white, but it is helpful when you do love yourself and show compassion to yourself first. It opens up a breadth of, opportunity, because like we said, compassion is vulnerable, and that makes it something that is strong because you're putting yourself in a vulnerable position, and that takes strength to do so. But by being vulnerability opens the door for connection and intimacy. We can't have a depth of connection without, that deep, without being connected to ourselves first, to be able to be vulnerable and open ourselves up. Mm-hmm.
So I'm kind of here and wondering, do you feel like compassion is intrinsically connected to love? Like, as like kind of an example, like you said, like self-love for one, and being empowered to have compassion toward yourself. But even like, let's say you hear on the news that there's a hurricane in Florida, right? And you're like, oh, I feel sorry for those people. And then you hear it hit your mom's house, right? And then you're like, oh, Mom, come and live with me because your house is flooded. That's based on your level of love with the individual person that's actually going through suffering. So do you feel like compassion is, because even with self-love, right? Like you would say like, if you don't love yourself, it's hard to be compassionate toward yourself, right? Like, I'm angry at myself, I hate myself. Yeah. You can't give yourself compassion because you don't have that love. Or even like with your example of a racist person, right? Mm-hmm. They're like, oh, I don't love that person because they're, whatever it is. Mm-hmm. I don't have compassion for them, right? Yeah. So do you think compassion is intrinsically always intertwined, or do you think that's just for the most part, or maybe like, what do you feel?
I think that's a great question, a great concept. I love that. I love that. We're talking about love. No, but I think you're right. I think they are intertwined. I think that we also often hear self-love and self-compassion used like interchangeably, and there is a slight difference between them, but I think that there's a lack of understanding of what compassion is. So I'm really glad like we're having this conversation to better like clarify that. A lot of people are much more familiar with self-love. And I think love definitely helps to fuel compassion and is connected in some of the ways that you shared. I think that was a really beautiful connection to make. And then some of the differences is like, self-compassion is, going back to the definition, is a recognition of pain and suffering with the desire to alleviate and prevent it. So kind of involves like a negative, like a pain, a suffering. Love doesn't have to, right? Love can be just positive. And so self-love, some of the different nuances, I guess, between self-compassion and self-love is with self-love, you can love yourself anytime, all the time. You know, you can practice self-care, you can eat your favorite foods, whatever, do something that makes you feel loved, say nice things about yourself. But can you do that when things are not easy? And that's where self-compassion comes in. When you're being told, you know, you're not good enough, or you're saying that to yourself, or you're having a hard day at work, or you're whatever, are you able to show yourself love even in those moments, which kind of turns into self-compassion, or can be a mix of the two. And so, yeah, I think like they're definitely combined, because if we're trying to provide that to other people, it's much easier to show compassion to the people that we love than the people that we don't love. But what if, in the ideal world of my brain, we all loved each other? Oh my God, I know it's crazy, but like, what if we all loved each other and saw each other as human, and because we are, and then that goes back to the component of self-compassion, which is normalizing or common humanity, which everybody touched on as well. Common humanity. We are all human. We're all people. We all experience these things. And if we can use that to remind ourselves, and so when somebody else is dealing with something that we maybe don't understand, but we can remember, oh yeah, they're human, just like me, and they hurt just like me, and they bleed just like me. And if I can see a connection of myself in this person, then maybe if I can love myself and I see myself in this person, then maybe I can love them and show compassion to them too, right? So thanks for sharing that, because that was a really nice connection to make.
Our lives, ultimately. And then there's another frequency still in the subconscious mind, which is alpha frequency. I don't know if you've heard of this. This is it's kind of the borderline alpha frequency, and beta is in the rational mind, and then alpha is the frequency of the brain that we get into when we're in nature. For example, when we start to feel relaxed, when we start to yawn, when we're just feeling calm, we are stepping into this more subtle state of the mind, which is an alpha frequency. And that's kind of, it's the borderline from subconscious and conscious, right? And so, well, I've learned with my yoga practice to go deeper in my meditation. So I kind of recognize when I'm still in alpha, and I recognize when I'm getting to the lower parts of alpha, I mean, I've never measured, I don't have the devices to measure my brain frequencies, but I've been able to experience very deep states of meditation. I don't know in what state they are, if they're at the bottom of alpha or already at theta. I don't know that. But I do know what it feels like. And there's this saying that Carl Jung once said, for as long as we continue to ignore the subconscious, we're going to think that everything that happens in our lives is we're going to call it destiny, pretty much. So as long as we don't bring the subconscious to the conscious mind, that unification, we're going to continue thinking that all the patterns that we repeat in our lives, it's just it's a destiny. But in reality, it's the subconscious mind always telling us, hey, I'm here. But our rationality is always telling us, oh, those are just thoughts, or those are just ideas that we suppress. But in reality, it's a separate. I don't want to say brain, but the right hemisphere and the left hemisphere, they have their own, and there's scientific data about this. It's been researched in the 70s. That the left hemisphere has its own, they work together. Yes, they work together, but they also, both hemispheres have their own independency, kind of. And this was discovered back in the last century by a study. This took decades to get to this point where I'll just explain real quick how they discovered this. So back in those years when there was not enough research about epilepsy attacks, or what do you call it? Attacks, or so back when there was not enough research and medication and treatments for epilepsy, it used to be more severe for people who had this illness. And what they did, they started first with animals, cutting there's this base at the bottom of the, kind of at the top of the neck, at the bottom of the brain. I know I've learned this in Spanish, so it's hard for me to think in Spanish and then say those names that I know in Spanish to English. So es el tallo cerebral. So they cut this. That's where both hemispheres are joined together, because they're in separate capsules, but they are joined together at the bottom. So what they did, they cut the tallo, and so that the electric pulsations wouldn't cross from one hemisphere to the other. That's what makes the epilepsy attacks to happen. So when they did this, years passed. I mean, they then applied this same technique to children, and they noticed that when they didn't cut like completely the base, they did just a part of it, and they noticed that the epilepsy attacks went lower, or were not as severe as they used to be. So then they took the courage to go all the way to cut all the, I mean, there was a micro incision that they did to fully separate both hemispheres, and they saw that the epilepsy attacks didn't disappear, but were almost cured, kind of.
You are, giving and, offering kindness and support and all of these things. But if you're not empowered enough in yourself to be able to have those boundaries that you alluded to earlier, then you might get burnt out and be providing too much compassion to other people. Or the other way, if you have empowerment without compassion, then that can feel maybe self-centered or disconnected, where you feel so strong and empowered to do whatever you want to do, but you don't have the emotional connection, the love, the support, the, maybe it's more coming from an ego place of, I'm going to do all of these things without recognizing the way that your actions affect yourself or others and having a deeper connection. And so, if we have these things together, if we have both compassion and empowerment together, we can create a more balanced approach to self-care and community care, giving back to the community as well. So I'd like you guys to kind of think about that a little bit, the connection between compassion and empowerment. And then also I just want to touch on some of the barriers to empowerment, some of the things that might get in the way. So when it comes to ourselves internally, we might have a barrier of feeling a fear of failure or self-doubt or limiting beliefs, that get in our way of feeling empowered and being able to embrace all of who we are and our strengths and move forward. Externally, we might be pressured by society and societal expectations and discrimination and or lack of resources or support that can create a barrier to feeling empowered. We can think of like minority communities, LGBTQ, BIPOC. Those communities often lack the support and the resources and are put down and discriminated against, which leads to a lack of empowerment. And so there's a lot of systemic issues that are happening to kind of keep some of those societies and peoples oppressed, right? So with this in mind, do you want to introduce the journaling stuff?
Yeah, so Christina was able to share so much with us, and thank you, because it was so impactful, and also how do I say this? It's, as we were receiving it, right, we were listening, we were learning, all of that, right? And then it's like, well, how does it relate to you and your life experiences? Now, I mentioned earlier that I'm a storyteller, so I will be tying in some stuff about storytelling right now and then a little later, but when we're reflecting on these things and we're thinking back about our own experiences, memories, glimpses, it helps us to process it in a different way, to relate, and then to relate with others, right? So based, or from everything that Christina shared, and as you write down, again, don't, how do I say it? Like, there's no right or wrong, right? So whatever's wanting to come up, obviously we were talking about compassion and self-empowerment. Maybe that brought out another idea of something else. Whatever it is that wants to move through you, let it move through you, right? So I will give you these prompts, but also allow yourself to be creative with it too. So the first one that I wanted to ask, after receiving all this beautiful information, the conversation, and almost broadening our eyes, right, to everything, can you remember of a time where you felt self-empowered? Maybe it was with a person, maybe it was something that you did. And also, if you don't have a journal, you can totally do this like almost like a meditation type thing. let whatever wants to come through, just kind of soak it in. But think of a time that you truly felt self-empowered. And maybe as I'm saying this, you're like, well, maybe I don't have that. Maybe think of a time where you did not, or what's the word? You felt disempowered? Yeah. Is that the correct grammar? Maybe it's that. Maybe thinking about a situation, or maybe it had to do with a person, or maybe it was a certain environment. Think of what comes up for you. And again, if, I know sometimes journaling, it can be a little tricky for some people, like it's like, I can't think of it. Don't force it. Maybe there's something else that wants to come out. But think about that. And when you're thinking about that, I want you to think about the details, where you were, who that person was, how you felt. Were there certain emotions? Maybe there were sensations in your body. Where did you feel it in your body? So this is a beautiful practice also to be really mindful of what that felt like for you, that experience. So I'm going to give you a few minutes to either sit with it, write it out. Is there anything that stands out now when you think of compassion and self-empowerment? Yes. What do compassion and self-empowerment mean to you? How do you now relate to it? Is there something that stands out for you now when you think of compassion and self-empowerment? The reason why I had given some of those prompts is, like I said, I do storytelling. I've been studying storytelling at South Mountain Community College for, I think, almost 4 years. And yeah, was that you? Oh, thanks. Yeah, and there's all kinds of storytelling, right? Storytelling started from the very beginning of our existence. That's how lessons, our culture, information was all passed down, right? And there's different types. There's traditional, there's folk tales, there's legends, myths, all kinds. I personally, my favorite is personal storytelling. And that's what I wanted to maybe plant a seed for all of you. And that's why I was giving you those prompts. One of the most basic ways that I can explain storytelling, and I learned this from my teacher, is when you're telling a story, there is structure to it, right? This is how things were, then this happened, now this is how things are, and this is why it's meaningful. When we tell stories, especially our own personal stories, it can be very empowering because then we get to know our story, we get to be with our story, we get to choose who we are in our story. Maybe we're not the victim. Maybe we are who we are because of everything that happened to us. And the more and more we tell our story, the more and more you own it. And that's what I think is super impactful about storytelling. And this is something, like I said, it's planting a seed, right? For maybe one day you will tell your story. But this is something that will take time. And I'm going to give an example because I think it's most relatable, because I think we're all pretty familiar with social media in a sense. But let's say somebody is going through something really tough, or they're really mad about something, and they go to social media and they post it and they're talking about it. They're very in it. They're very reactive, and that might not be received very well. So similar in storytelling, when you get to be with your story and you get to tell it many, many times, you get more comfortable with it. You get to decide, who am I? How did that feel? So an example in the storytelling world, let's say I'm going through something really challenging. I guess the easiest example would be, let's say I lost somebody very important in my life and I want to tell a story about them. And I go to the stage and I start telling that story, and guess what? I break down because I'm having a hard time, right? Everybody in that room is going to be freaking out and worried about me because I am not yet truly grounded in my story and empowered from my story, right? So that's why it takes time sometimes to be with our stories and get to know who we are and what has happened for us. I really truly believe things happen for us if we let them, right? So I was asking you these questions, and again, storytelling it's a memory. It's coming back to a moment, to tell a story, to bring that back to life, because when somebody hears your story, they're like, oh, I can no longer see you as a stranger because I know your story. I don't know how many times I've been in a room with people I normally would have never came across ever, and I hear their story and I'm like, I know you now. I know your story. I am cheering for you. You know, it's so empowering. It's beautiful. And I just want to also say, everybody is a storyteller. We already do it all the time. It is an innate human. I don't even know. Like, it's in us. So, yeah, I wanted to talk a little bit about that to empower you to also tell your story, because it is important. Every one of us has a story to tell. Mm-hmm. No one in this world has lived what you've lived through, has had the same experience as you. No one. No, I remember when I first took my first class and I was like, I have no stories to tell. My stories are not cool. And you know what? Sometimes it's the simplest stories because they're relatable. Because we're like, oh yeah, like I know what that's like. It doesn't have, although I've heard some really crazy wild stories and they're really cool, but that doesn't diminish my experience, right? We all have our own story, and it truly is so empowering to be able to tell it and have that confidence in knowing that I'm gonna step into that story and I'm gonna own that story. So, with that said, I would love to open it up to anyone. If anything in particular came up, if there was a memory that came up for you, a moment, a feeling around what it felt like when we were talking about compassion and self-empowerment, because especially in today's world, it is so important to show up with love and compassion within us. Because I do believe that even if we're not doing, how do I say, if someone maybe might not be receiving it very much, if we show up with it, I still believe that's planting a seed. I still think that's making a difference. And so it's so important to step into that, to always, in a sense, like, share our light. I mean, really, we all have dark. I honor the dark, believe me. But there's so much dark, and if we get the chance to share light, wow, what a gift, right? What a gift. So if there were any moments that anything came up for you, that you had a memory, I'd love to hear, because that could eventually become a story for you. If it was a very impactful moment that can shed light into somebody else's life and say, oh, we aren't very different. Oh, I can relate to that pain and suffering like Christina was talking about. I would love to open it up to anybody who wants to.
Some of what Herbey was saying and what Sam was saying about love and how that connects to compassion. One thing is, like, the word compassion, comes with, and passion, love, right? So it's actually in the word, it means with love, right? And so it's like moving with love. So I thought that was something small that is like meaningful. I wanted to be sure to share with you guys. And as I was reflecting on some of these questions that were asked, I started, making some deeper connections of my own experience with compassion and empowerment. And I was thinking, what are the times that I feel empowered? Well, I feel empowered when I'm with other people who are like lifting me up, who are supporting me, my goals, my dreams, my values, my aspirations. Like when I'm in situations, like sometimes with my nonprofit, I will have days where I'm just like, there's no way this is going to work. This is like, this is awful. I should just give up or whatever. And then I meet with my team or people and they're like, I love what you're doing. This is great. And we're into it. And I'm like, really? And then I'm like, okay. And then I get all excited and empowered again. And it's like making that connection that like, I find my power through other people and like the connections that we make with other people. And so to me, as I was reflecting, I'm like, compassion feels, when somebody's showing me compassion, if I've been through pain and whatever, it feels warm. It feels like I'm not alone, right? And I think that really correlates to being empowered, where you feel like, or I feel like I have more strength and power and capability when I've got a team or people supporting me, or like I'm not in it alone. And I mean, there literally is strength in numbers. Like we can do much more with multiple people than we can with one person. So that was something that came up. And then to take it further into somewhat of a story, like I was reflecting on how this last like 1 to 2 years has been quite difficult for me, and I've experienced a lot of like self-doubt, and like it's a complicated thing. Like I'm pretty compassionate towards myself, but I've been experiencing more doubt and more like apathy almost towards things. Like, what's the point? Like, it's not going to go anywhere. And some of that isn't a doubt of myself. It's a doubt of the world being able to receive whatever it is I'm trying to do. And so like, I've been also reflecting on like, why is this, like, how do I move out of this? As it's been going on for a while, and how do I get back into feeling more empowered? And as we were doing this reflection, I was realizing how, the past 2 years or so have been really hard for me because I've lost a lot of people in my life. I ended a lot of friendships and relationships and things like that were just not serving me, and people who were really causing me a lot of pain. And so I also experienced a lot of loss. And so I've been processing all of that, and I think it's indicative of like me losing all of these people in my life reduces the amount of support, and now realizing that like the compassion and love of others and community and connection creates empowerment with myself. It makes sense why I'm not feeling as strong right now. I'm not feeling as empowered because I don't have the support that I once had. In a way, I think I need to shift my perspective though, because even though those people aren't there, it was an illusion that they were providing me support before. They weren't. And that's why I was like, well, I can't be connected with you anymore, because it was not actually, they weren't healthy relationships, or there was problems with all these things. And so, it's like, I think in one way my brain feels like, oh, you're alone now. You've got like, you're by yourself. So you're less powerful, you're less empowered. But then at the same time, it's like, I think I need to remind myself like, no, that hasn't really changed, especially because those people that were in my life that I thought were supporters really weren't. And that's why they're not in my life anymore. So it's like, I can still choose to, love and support myself and find new people and community and safe spaces to be able to feel connected and empowered by others, to feel like empowered myself. So, yeah.